The Greensboro sit-ins were a series of nonviolent protests in Greensboro, North Carolina in 1960, which led to the Woolworth department store chain removing its policy of racial segregation in the southern United States. While not the first in the civil rights movement, the Greensboro sit-ins were an instrumental action and also the most well-known sit-ins of the civil rights movement. These sit-ins led to increased national sentiment at a crucial period in U.S. history. The primary event took place at the Greensboro, North Carolina Woolworth store, now the International Civil Rights Center and Museum. This event was caused by whites-only lunch counters at the Woolworth store and racial segregation in public accommodations. On February 1st, 1960, the four sat down at the lunch counter inside the Woolworth store. The men, later also known as the AT&T Four or the Greensboro Four, had purchased toothpaste and other products from a desegregated counter at the store with no problems, and then were refused service at the store's lunch counter when they each asked for a cup of coffee. Following store policy, staff refused to serve the black men at the whites-only counter, and store manager Clarence Harris asked them to leave. However, the four freshmen stayed until the store closed that night. The next day, more than 20 black students recruited from other campus groups joined the sit-in. Newspaper reporters and TV videographers covered following this day, and as early as 1 week after the Greensboro sit-ins began, students in other schools launched their own protests. As the sit-ins continued, tensions grew in Greensboro. Students began a far-reaching boycott of stores with segregated lunch counters. Sales at the boycotted stores dropped. Despite the sometimes violent reaction to the sit-ins, these demonstrations eventually led to positive results. For example, the sit-ins received significant media and government attention. When the Woolworth store sit-in began, the Greensboro newspaper published daily articles on the growth and impact of the demonstration. The media picked up this issue and covered it nationwide, beginning with lunch counters and spreading to other forms of public accommodation, including transport facilities, art galleries, beaches, parks, swimming pools, libraries, and even museums around the South. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 mandated desegregation in public accommodations.
Four areas of economic age discrimination can generally be recognized. The first of these is preference given to youthful applicants in jobs which can also be performed by older workers. An example is of practicing by only allowing young women to perform the task of flight attendants. This has changed under the pressure of the Age Discrimination in the Employment Act, as well as public opinion, so that now men as well as older women serve lunch at 30,000 feet. A second area of age discrimination in the economy was the practice of discharging employees at an older age regardless of job performance. These cases are hard to prove and difficult to litigate. This is mainly true because job performance can be subjective and often influenced by office politics. Thirdly, economic ageism has been related to limiting promotion opportunities to younger employees. Personal decisions based on age stereotyping are very common. Beliefs about aging and middle-aged personas are also entrenched that many in an unspoken decision derives older workers a well-deserved promotion solely because of the prejudice of a supervisor or a manager. These decisions are generally made in context of performance by ratings by managers concerning their supervisees. The evidence that there is a negative age performance rating relationship and that this relationship is mainly influenced by the type of performance measured. This means that when object productivity indices were used, there was a pattern of increases in age performance as age increased. Therefore, it is reasonable to conclude that supervisees see the opposite of the facts. This is possible not only because the performance ratings are so subjective, but because prejudice leads to perceptions that are not well-intentioned in the first place. Political skills are also responsible for the evaluations received by many employees. Those who know tactics will be evaluated better than those who lack such skills. Since it has been found that older workers are less likely to use such tactics, it is possible that older workers often receive a lower evaluation than younger workers, not only because of the ageist prejudice already discussed, but also because of the failure to talk to supervisors who are often younger than they are. This is sold upon the economic and emotional stability of the so-called older worker is therefore enhanced by the practice of permitting recent college graduates without any supervisory experience or with limited supervisory experience to become managers and thus oversee older employees. By older in this case is meant anyone over 40. The Age Discrimination Act applies to anyone over 40 who are protected from age discrimination. Virginia Stapleton is a 59-year-old woman who has been existing on welfare together with her husband. She searched hard for a job in the secretarial field since she was an experienced typist. She searched the newspapers and answered a number of advertisements. However, when she did finally get an interview, she was treated with a cold politeness. One potential employer was very blunt and without hesitation asked her, "What can you do for us at this stage in your life?" Even though Mrs. Stapleton wants to be off of welfare, she is not able to because of the workforce.
McCain, one of the 4 African-American men at the scene, shares his recollection of the exchanges the 4 African-American had with the lunch counter staff, the store manager, and a policeman who arrived on the scene, and also a lesson he learned that day. What I learned from that little incident was, don't you ever stereotype anybody in this life until you at least experience them and have had the opportunity to talk to them. I'm even more cognizant of that today, situations like that, and I'm always open to people who speak differently, who look differently, and who come from different places, he says.
In regards to ageism, psychologists need to respond to ageism the same way they do when a person is discriminated against because of race or a disability, says Jacqueline Goodchild, who has a PhD at the University of California. Godschild, on behalf of the APA's Committee on Aging, drafted a resolution against ageism that was approved by the APA Council of Representatives in February 2002. The resolution says that the APA is against ageism in all of its forms and emphasizes that the APA's commitment to support efforts to eliminate it. APA is against racism, sexism, and all other isms, and it made sense to be against ageism too. And so should the United States.